indulgence, including to Ms. Simon, who's now recognized for 5 minutes for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ranking Member Lee. I just have a couple of quick questions. As some folks on our side of the aisle know, that I dig into the congressional record daily. And in 1942, there was an Executive Order 9066, and I'm sure, Professor, you know that order. You also may remember, if you've studied 1942, there was also the Congressional Act. It was an act passed by Congress. It was called Public Law 503. Just like Public Law 503, and just like the Executive Order 9066, I would assert that at some point, this nation, too, will have to reckon with the shame of what we are doing. You might recall in 42 that members of the Japanese community as a whole were interned based on who they were, because this Congress at that time, as did the president, said that they were all indeed criminals. They were interned in my district. They were taken out to the streets with keys on their necks and incarcerated for months and months and months, not given the civil rights that they deserved. I have a quick question for Professor, or I should say Judge Dole. Actually, it's a two-part question. I'll ask it and you can answer. We've talked a lot about detainers here. I've worked in a jail for quite some time, particularly around DV, and I know even in the most progressive of cities, judges have a lot of power here. When someone comes in they're arrested and they're charged, they come in the morning, the charging attorney charges them, they're still in custody. They don't have usually a preliminary hearing for quite some time, but if you're arrested for rape, if you're arrested for child pornography, are you getting out that same day or a couple of weeks? I just want to answer, if you're charged with a serious crime by a district attorney, I know you're on the civil side, but I'm just curious, we're just not throwing people out.
You're talking in the immigration system?
No,
or the
I'm
criminal
asking
system?
the criminal system.
Again, my experience there is less, but I would say extremely unlikely that someone with a violent criminal charge would be released, in my experience.
My other question is really around detainers. I want you, actually it's a three-part question, I want you to talk a little bit about the detainment process. You know that in some jurisdictions around the country, the public defender's office, who's on the criminal side, is also working with the civil side in the immigration court. We know that folks don't have rights to attorneys on the immigration side. I want you to talk a little bit about that. But moreover, in your experience after you were pushed away from the bench, I'm curious to understand your understanding of what's wrong in part with our immigration system, particularly the asylum process, knowing that there's over 160,000 people without papers right now waiting to be able to access what we believe as Americans is a right to an asylum process. Some folks in this room call them illegal and dehumanize them, but these are folks who are escaping persecution. So again, those two questions around detaining and really what we really need to do to break open a criminal justice system that actually works and an immigration system that is not broken.
So to take the second question first, the system, the asylum system, the immigration court system, OPLA needs additional funding. There are 3.7 million cases currently in the immigration court backlog. There are 700 judges. Department of Justice has asked for additional judges, yet they've been firing judges inexplicably.
You too, ma'am, were fired, is that correct?
Yes, I was. And it's very important also that we have more funding for prosecution.
In your courtroom, would you ever see children by themselves without an attorney?
Absolutely. A number of the undocumented children do appear without counsel. We had provided a juvenile court docket so that children wouldn't be mixed in with adults, and that the OPLA attorneys could put their eyes on them and work with Homeland Security investigation.
We know funding, and that we know that folks who are, we need funding to create a system that actually works for folks. But
ultimately,
also talk about
comprehensive immigration reform, because there has to be legal pathways. As Representative Gosar mentioned, there has to be legal pathways for legal immigration. that the employers and that the individuals that are fleeing fear can utilize, and such that our border is safe and that our communities can be responsive.
Judge Stoll, you have 3 seconds. Talk about the detainers, if I can have 5 seconds.
Can you
The
remind me what you
detainer
want me to
issue,
say?
the civil rights around detainers.
Detainers issues, yes. So again, detainers are voluntary. They're administrative warrants. They're not judicial warrants, and that each community should be able to work together with their communities to either enforce the warrants as they see fit. Again, in Boston, being the safest large city in the country, works closely with Community Trust, with their city and their community and their police, and with ICE also when needed.
I appreciate the example. I'm going to have to yield back.